1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska. This is the REPORT Husker Show.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio, joined by sports director Kevin Sjuts and sports reporter Chase Matteson. This is the REPORT Husker Show. We're live right now on the 1011 live stream, which again lives on 1011now.com. Also our Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV apps, also live on the 1011 YouTube channel. And after the show is done, you can listen to it on your favorite podcast platform. And we finally get to come to you after a winning night of Husker football. Kevin, it was absolutely beautiful outside tonight, especially for mid-September. Could have been a lot hotter, and it's made all the better by the fact that we get to talk about a Husker win tonight.
It was perfect. Like you talk about A-plus nights, this was really beautiful. Not too cool, not too hot. Felt like fall. And you know, in the Sea of Red, there's 86+ thousand fans. The 390th consecutive sellout inside Memorial Stadium, and folks are leaving happy tonight, Bill. 35-11 final score. Nebraska defeats Northern Illinois in a game that was a very complete performance. Good things from the offense, good things from the defense. They were really good. And special teams did a nice job as well.
Yeah, Chase, again, probably the biggest takeaway from this game would be the fact that no Jeff Sims. Again, in the new injury report that they put out before the game, he was listed as questionable. Henrich Haarberg gets the start and goes 14 for 24, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, rushes 21 times, 98 yards and a touchdown. He did have one fumble, but I think you could probably blame that fumble more on poor blocking on the offensive line.
Yeah, what a story, right? You know, a Nebraska kid, just the 4th Nebraska native to start at quarterback since 2001. The first since 2001, and, you know, just a great night for Henrich, and I think the connection with Thomas Fidone, but then also just the success he had on the ground game. Like, people wanted to see this Husker offense and Coach Satterfield's offense have success, and what better guy to do it than a guy like Henrich, who's just a Nebraska kid and been probably dreaming for this moment his whole life.
And Kevin, you got a chance right as he stepped off the podium. If you watch 1011 at 10 live, you interviewed him live. Tell me about that interview and the vibe you got from Henrich after the game.
Well, it was really interesting because as Henrich was walking over to me, you know, I told him congratulations, and I had the stat sheet in my hand, and I said, "Have you seen your stats?" He said, "No," and so I handed him my box score, and he looks at it and he goes, "No interceptions." Like, never mind the fact that he had the 2 passing touchdowns, he had the rushing touchdown, he had over 250 yards of total offense. He was only worried about the interception situation. Appreciated Henrich joining us on 1011 right at the top of the newscast after Chase got done with the highlights. It timed out great. But yeah, Henrich was happy, and I also got to ask him about the moment before he went into his post-game news conference. Because right outside that room was Tommy Frazier and Eric Crouch. So Henrich is walking over there to do his interview, and then all of a sudden 2 Husker legends are right there that, oh, by the way, play the same position he does.
Yeah.
And they both gave him a big hug, and there were some folks. Heinrich's mom was right there. She took a picture of them together. That was the good stuff right there.
I mean, you knew he had to be watching those guys as he grew up out in Kearney.
Absolutely. And he even shared with me on air that Tommy told him, "You need to get down and slide a little bit more." And Henrich chipped back right at him and said, "I didn't ever see you do that." So that's good stuff.
Absolutely.
But Henrich did play well. I think we need to address this right now toward the beginning of the podcast here, guys. Will Henrich start next week? That's not a guarantee. And Matt Rule was very adamant in not answering any questions about what the quarterback position looks like moving forward. He is not saying that Henrich's the guy. He's not saying Jeff Sims is out. He's not saying Jeff Sims is the guy. They're going to enter this week the same way they did last week, and that is to let the available players be on the field, see what happens in terms of the preparation, and that's ultimately what's going to decide who is under center for Nebraska against Louisiana Tech next Saturday.
Yeah, I said he wouldn't entertain any hypotheticals as to who might be injured or who might not be, again, depending on that Jeff Sims ankle. But
sorry to cut you off. I will say this. The announcement of Henrich Haarberg starting at quarterback came when the starting lineups were introduced inside Memorial Stadium. But if you watch the pregame warm-ups about 45 minutes before the game kicked off, Henrich was taking the snaps with Ben Scott. And then when they did their stretching lines, Henrich was first. Jeff Sims was last in the quarterback line.
Okay.
He was behind Luke Longvall. He was behind Jack Woche. So we got the sense pretty quickly that Henrich was going to start in this game.
But Chase, again, watching the TV broadcast, Jeff Sims looked like he played the part of a very good teammate. He was right there on the sideline to give Henrich encouragement. Let him know what might have gone wrong. I think it was after the fumble. He was right there to greet him off the field.
Yeah, that's what you want to see from your starting quarterback for the first 2 weeks. Right now, being on the bench because of injury, but still playing an active role and being a supportive role. And for those at home on Fox Sports 1, if you weren't paying attention on Twitter, I was all tuned in on who was going to be the starting quarterback, but they jumped right to the broadcast right before the kickoff. So we didn't really get to see who the starting quarterback was until that first Nebraska drive. But yeah, hats off to Jeff Sims for being a supportive teammate, a good teammate, right? And a leader on the sidelines to the best of his abilities. I also think Chubba Purdy, probably went into this week with Sims up in the air as like, hey, maybe there's a chance I can see the field. He did get in the fourth quarter towards the very end, but I think he did a good job as well, being a single caller, being somebody that can support Henrich, and Henrich delivered, and he also, one thing to credit is that, the rushing yards and not sliding, lowering his shoulder was all great, but also he just fit some of Satterfield's design plays that we saw Sims run, right? He carried the ball 21 times. Like this was it didn't feel like the offense changed too much. It was just clicking better. It was just more consistent.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And I think obviously the other headline out of this game is an extremely salty Nebraska defense, only giving up 149 yards for the entire game, half of that coming on the final drive against the second string.
They're good.
They're really good.
They are really good. Yeah, you're right. Like Tony White's scheme, it's fun to watch. He has some good players. Yes, Tony White deserves some credit for implementing this thing in short time, for teaching his guys how this all works. But he's got good players back there, and I don't think that some of those guys are getting the respect and the credit that they deserve. Quinton Newsome is really good. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of Malcolm Hartzog. He had an awesome tackle one-on-one tonight. Omar Brown, Isaac Gifford. I'm just going on the back end. The linebackers played well again tonight. You know who led Nebraska in tackles this evening?
Nash Hutmacher.
Nash
Nose
did.
tackle.
The nose guard led Nebraska in tackles.
Well,
6.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, Kevin, is that just to talk about Hutmacher, he had 15 total tackles all last season. He has 10 already this season, and I think part of that is that 3-3-5 scheme. When you have a defensive lineman, a nose guard like that, nose tackle, just in the middle of the defense, he's kind of playing better than we've expected, because you're right there in the middle and you can kind of reach left, reach right, and it shows, and it's tough.
He's disruptive.
2.5 tackles for loss and a half a sack.
And in the first half, that's when the tone really got established. Nebraska scores right away. That was great. Huskers actually got to play with the lead. Was that their first points of the first half
all year,
this entire season? So it was good to see them march the field. But with the lead, when you give the defense is going to hold its own, but when they have a little extra swagger, a little pep in their step because the scoreboard leans Nebraska's way, I mean, that's even better. That's gravy for this unit. They're good. They're really, really good. And I think Nash helped set the tone up front for Nebraska, because we saw Northern Illinois try to establish a run game early, and it was going in the wrong direction for the Huskies. And that forced Rocky Lombardi to throw the football. And, he wasn't the most effective quarterback. You could tell,
he was under pressure a lot,
He was under pressure a lot, and I believe his completion percentage going into the game was at 53%. And Lombardi finishes this game 11 of 28. And I mentioned it during the newscast tonight. I think a good portion of 11 of 28 and the defensive totals being so low, yardage-wise, is because the secondary covered really well downfield. And actually, I thought that Northern Illinois' wide receivers, they were big, they looked physical in warm-ups, and I thought that they would give Nebraska a little bit of a test, but that certainly was not the case. And the one name we haven't mentioned that we need to shout out right now is Tommy Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy
Playing
Hill
both sides of the ball.
He got a lot of run at corner. And I know Tommy's story has been a little complicated at Nebraska. He's played offense. He's played defense. He's had to kind of climb his way back into the depth chart, but he must have had an awesome week of practice, and he is an asset to this team. And Tommy Hill is one of the faster guys on the team. And clearly he's proven he can cover guys downfield, and that's just another weapon that the Huskers have defensively to try to blanket some of these teams that they're going to see in the future. I think about Big Ten play when you're facing an Iowa, Wisconsin, a Michigan that will try to stretch the field a little bit or at least manage a passing game, that you got to like where you line up defensively with the guys on the back end that Nebraska has.
And he had one pass interference penalty against him. And again, watching the TV broadcast, it was one of those pass interference penalties where the quarterback underthrew the ball, and so he got dinged with one of those PI penalties. So I didn't think it was pass interference, but that's just me, Chase.
Yeah, the secondary played really well, and we saw Quentin Newsome have an interception, but then they ruled his foot out. Too bad for him trying to get his first interception as a Husker. But just, still, well, he is. He's trying to. But, he still had multiple passes defended. And you look at Northern Illinois, I think they finished with 148 yards, total yards. 149 total yards. They got 75 yards on that last drive. So the Huskers defense just impressed from start to finish. And that last drive, they were playing tempo, and there was a lot of reserves in for Nebraska. But I also want to shout out John Bullock and his play tonight. I feel like he was the first to some of the tackles and some of the plays. But the secondary shine, which just slowed Rocky Lombardi down, and the front seven or front eight, if you're putting 8 people in the box with a 3-3-5, really contained the run game. They couldn't do anything, it felt like.
I've never seen a defense be as exciting to watch with 8 guys drop back in coverage. Usually, because that's your prevent. You drop 8.
But they're bringing guys from all these really unique angles.
Yeah.
And MJ Sherman gets his first sack as a Husker tonight. That was really cool to see. I mean, he just wasn't blocked. And he was going at 100 mile an hour right at that quarterback, and he had a nice game. Chase just brought up some of the numbers. Another thing that I would add to it, I'm glad you mentioned, Chase, that 75 yards on that final drive for Northern Illinois. With about 2 minutes left in the first half, Northern Illinois had -7 rushing yards. They were able to run the ball a few times late in the first half, and that allowed them to get on the positive side of the ledger. But I think most people at Memorial Stadium, before they went to the concession stands at halftime, they were thinking, oh my goodness, Northern Illinois is going to be in the negative rushing-wise. And this is a team that likes to play a little physical, and they like to try to pound you up the middle, and it was not happening.
No.
So I'm glad we spent some time on the defense, and we've highlighted Henrich Haarberg, because I think that's kind of where this conversation starts and ends with Nebraska's first win of the Matt Rule era.
Yeah, and it will be interesting. Again, they got Louisiana Tech at home again next Saturday, 2:30 kick. And I guess we will see who lines up under center again.
Who do you think it'll be?
I had this conversation with our producer, Matt Kirkle, watching the game. I think it's Henrich Haarberg again. I think some of the mistakes that you've seen under Sims were poor decisions made by Sims. And I think a lot of what you saw tonight from Haarberg were smart decisions that were made. The one turnover he had, again, was, I'd argue, a missed block by the offensive lineman. He got hit as he was throwing.
This all assumes that Sims is healthy next week.
I would still say Haarberg. I think he has given himself a runway, and they're going to let him kind of go down a little bit.
What do the fans want?
What about Chubba? No, I'm kidding. I think...
Really, what are the fans saying right now? Do they want Henrich to start next week?
A lot of the comments I saw on the Husker post-game presser YouTube stream was Haarberg is now QB1, or should be QB1. That would be fascinating
Does
if we
he
could.
get an Amigos deal now?
Or Akers, Gary Michaels clothiers.
Yeah, the Jeff Sims meal is not going to taste the same if he's not starting, right? To kind of answer your question, Kevin, I think if Sims is healthy, I think you see Sims. I think, Rule kind of pushed his chips to the center of the table when he picked Sims over Casey Thompson. And obviously the fan base knee-jerk reaction is going to be Haarberg because he had this great game in front of a sold-out crowd under the lights. But, Northern Illinois is not the greatest team, and I don't think Louisiana Tech is either. However, if you're putting a lot of faith in Sims, and he was the QB1 for most of camp and coming into the season, I think you play him, and then if things go wrong, you play Haarberg. I'm not saying we're going to start a QB battle mid-season week 4, but it would shock me to see Rule completely divert his energy to Haarberg if Sims is healthy next week.
All right, I'm going to add a couple of things here, and I'm not trying to advocate for one thing over the other. I'll make that clear right now. Do you think, because Matt Rule and his coaching staff, Marcus Satterfield and all the way down the line, they have preached to not be a prisoner of the moment and not to be too reactionary and to just stay steady and consistent with their message. So if they pivot to a different quarterback and stay with that, are they actually doing what they want to avoid doing? Are they becoming prisoners of the moment because Henrich played really well against Northern Illinois?
I mean, but we've also said Rule's going to play the guys that give his team the best chance to win.
But I'm just throwing this out there to, get the mental gears spinning a little bit at this late hour.
It's late.
And then secondly, I will throw this on the table as well. Is Matt Rule doing this as a consequence for the fumbles that Jeff Sims had last week? Because it happened with Anthony Grant, and he was back on the field in game number 3 of the season.
That's true.
So is this another example of, just kind of the way we're going to manage our players who are making costly mistakes? So I'm not saying that it's a quote-unquote punishment, but I think that we could fairly say, what happened after the Minnesota game and into the Colorado game with Anthony Grant, that was a punishment. And then he must have proved some ball security in practice leading up to the Illinois game. So, hence, he was on the field against the Huskies, and Anthony Grant ends up carrying the ball 7 times for 46 yards, and he gets a touchdown.
I will say it's easier to do that with the running back than your starting quarterback.
Why is that?
Well, because the quarterback is looked at as the leader of the team, right? There's game captains, sure, but the quarterback's who everyone's rallying around, and I'm just kind of curious what the kind of energy of the offense was like tonight, post game, or just kind of the feelings of the players, because the defense, questions are answered, but the offense, are the players buying more into Henrich because of his success? The fans can be reactionary, but I think the players and how they respond is something that's going to be interesting, and how they field questions next week to the media about both quarterbacks.
I think I could shed a little bit of light on that, having been on the sidelines for this game. And I think the players really respect Henrich Haarberg. I think they also respect Jeff Sims. Even after one of the touchdown, it was Gabe Ervin's touchdown run. I was a little bit around the bench area for Nebraska as I was walking from one side of the field to the next. And Henrich Haarberg went right up to Gabe Ervin, and they had a moment, Henrich was really happy for Gabe. Gabe obviously is really happy for Henrich. And you get the sense that there is, I don't want to call it an admiration. I think that that's way too lathered and a little bit hyperbolic. But I feel like there is a high level of respect for Henrich Haarberg. Plus, everybody knows his backstory. The fact that he is a Nebraska guy who spent quite a bit of time on a depth chart. And, his story is very different than Jeff Sims. Jeff Sims has started for multiple years in the ACC, and he came in here and he won the quarterback battle in the spring. So there's a lot of things at play. But to answer the point that add to the point you just made, Chase, is that I do feel like players really respect and they value Henrich Haarberg. I think they respect and value Jeff Sims as well. I think it's just a little bit different based on their stories, their pasts, and plus Heinrich's poured a lot into this program, and this is the team he grew up watching, and that means something. And I think his teammates, where there is a number of guys who are native Nebraskans like Henrich on the roster, and they know that. So there's a little bit of like depth to the admiration for the University of Nebraska football program in its totality with Henrich Haarberg.
I know he was roommates with Irvin.
He was roommates with like everybody.
I know he's roommates with Fedoni as well. So his buddies, again, so obviously happy for Irvin, again, and then the connection with Fedoni.
That's a good
Hit him
point.
last week at the end of the Colorado game for Fedoni's first touchdown, and then Fedoni again today. That's been really nice to see him kind of break out of his shell a little bit. Had a great catch on the sideline for a 3rd and 14 conversion.
But before we wrap, I mean, since we're talking about Henrich, I mean, we got to razz Chase a little bit for not laughing at my joke on air. I mean, like, you just kind of left me out there.
Chase, come on, man.
H2 leads the O. Like, Chase, be honest with me. Did you not get it? Did you not like it?
I didn't get it initially.
It's okay if you didn't like it.
I didn't get it until like the next point you were making and sharing. I was like, I see what he was saying.
I didn't know that it was that highbrow of a comment. And if anything, it's stupid dad humor.
We understand the stupid dad humor. That's our playing field.
Do people get like, what was it that elaborate of? H2 leads the O.
I didn't hear it live as you said it, but just as you say it right now, I'm like, oh yeah, H2O. Yeah.
You know, I threw
H2O.
H2 leads the.
You should write it. We have a white.
If you think it's stupid, I'll admit.
No,
it is kind of stupid.
It's good. There's a lot of numbers on Nebraska's team. You know, Billy Kemp the fourth, Thomas Fedoni the second. So I was thrown off, but I'll do better next time on picking up what you're putting down.
Chase, how much does a polar bear weigh?
Nash Hutmaker? I don't know what he weighed in it.
Enough to break the ice.
Yeah, you know, and here's the other thing about the H2 leads the O joke.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw it, but I had a live viewing audience for the news tonight.
I did see that.
There were about 15, I don't know if they were middle school age, either late elementary, they're probably middle schoolers.
Like 8 to 11 maybe range?
I don't know. I think they were all about middle school age. They were all helping clean up the stadium. They're like, oh my goodness, you're live on TV. I said, yeah, I'm going to be in about 5 minutes. So what started with like 3 kids sitting right behind the camera and watching me. And I told them they were fine. They were really nice kids, actually. I told them, just don't be loud, don't throw anything at me, and don't do anything that your mom and dad would ground you for. And they kind of laughed, and they were good. But then 3 became 8, and it became 12, and it ended up being, I don't know, between 15 and 20. So I throw out this stupid dad humor on live TV. Not only does my sports cohort live on air not react to it because he doesn't get it, and now I feel like a complete dum-dum, my live viewing audience, like, I sense the eye roll and the that's who I was trying to at least like get something out of, like, viewers. But the kids gave me nothing. If anything, like, I totally lost cool points with them. So that's the low point of my night.
But I like it.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
We'll have to work on Chase.
You should have told Henrich right there in person, live, when you were going back and forth.
I didn't feel that confident in the phrase. Okay.
Well, if he starts next week, we gotta.
Yeah, we have something.
We'll break it out and hey H2 leading the O.
No, you don't call somebody.
How was your evening?
It's not a nickname. It's just like one of the, as we do, like the teases in the newscast, how we put little cheeky words or something creative as opposed to Husker football. We try to give our viewers a little something.
A little creativity.
Like that's where you would put it. You wouldn't actually like call somebody that.
No.
We've spent way too much on it, but I had to get that off my chest.
All right, well, it's late. We'll let everyone go. I do want to point out real quickly, Colorado State is beating Colorado 21-14 with 5 minutes left in the third quarter.
Oh, boy. We don't need to go there.
Yeah, so, all right. Chase, anything else you want to get in there before we let everyone go?
Yeah, I don't think Colorado's season impacts. I don't think bowl committees are looking at Nebraska at the moment, but
we'll see.
you never know.
All right, so
okay.
Yeah,
Since Chase mentioned the B word,
he did.
bowl,
He did.
like, we don't need to go big picture here and spend too much time on it because it is late. But it is fun to talk after a win.
It is.
Nebraska beats Northern Illinois. You get a better picture of what this team looks like, even though it is against a MAC opponent. How many teams or opponents remain on Nebraska's schedule that you instantly say they are overmatched?
Michigan, Wisconsin, and maybe Iowa.
I don't even know about Wisconsin. They were struggling in the first half against Georgia Southern today.
Yeah, well, Nebraska struggled against Georgia Southern last year too, so
Different year.
You look at the Big Ten today. Illinois got killed by Penn State. Michigan State got killed by Washington, and Minnesota lost. Northwestern lost. Iowa played probably their best game of the season, but that was against Western Michigan. And Wisconsin struggled in the first half against Georgia Southern. And Purdue lost. So there's been a lot of bloodshed in the Big Ten today. Some better opponents, but Nebraska's going to have a chance.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
and
Again, you don't want to get too caught up and go try to start re-predicting the whole season based on a win over Northern Illinois. But it's not just Nebraska we're looking at. We're looking at the Big Ten and the remaining opponents on Nebraska's schedule.
Yeah.
And that defense, if that defense plays like this, it's going to keep them, I think, in almost every single game for the rest of the year.
Michigan's going to be tough.
Michigan will be tough. They're going to run the ball.
But again, you don't play Ohio State. You're not playing Penn State.
Nope.
And it's okay. I think Maryland, we didn't mention Maryland. I think Maryland's all right.
Yeah, they're good. The other Tagovailoa. All right. So again, next Saturday, Louisiana Tech 2:30 kick. That game is going to be on BTN. We will have another episode, kind of looking ahead to that and some other storylines next week. So keep it tuned for that. So in the 1011 Now streaming studio, this has been the REPORT Husker Show. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the 1011 YouTube channel. As always, keep it tuned to 1011 both on air and online for all the latest news, weather, and sports. For Kevin Sjuts, for Chase Matteson, I'm Bill Rentschler. Thanks everyone for watching.
You've been listening to the REPORT Husker Show from 1011. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch the REPORT on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.